right, so before we get you all to tables, so we can actually talk about these things and do some workshopping, I want to breeze really quickly over some of these. This is a maxim we use in the office a lot, you shall versus you should. Okay, so you shall, ordinance, building code, design guidelines, you should, design guidelines, other asterisk. Sometimes you can regulate with design guidelines, sometimes you can't. So that's why we want to talk about that. I really don't like that new building, but I cannot tell you why. I really think the city should do something about all of these. I don't know what. You cannot legislate good design. So that's one reason why we're here in this workshop. I don't care if it's the tightest code you've ever had. One of the most valuable exercises I had when I was at Andrews University was we did Orinoco Charter Township's form-based code. We were told as fifth-year students, design the worst building you can under the code you just designed. We were fifth-year architecture students. Imagine what damage we could have done with a couple of years of experience as architects. They were heinous. And that's the thing you have to understand here. You could write the best code, you cannot regulate good design. You can't even really legislate bad design or out-legislate bad design, and that's why we're looking at an 80-20 rule. So when we're looking at 80-20, we're thinking, okay, you can't get all the details right. You may not be able to get all the massing right. Can you get the building in the right place? Can you get the way it works with other buildings into the right place? Can you get 80% of the details right? Because when you're walking along that street, you will not be able to determine how good every detail turned out, but you're going to know how you feel in the space. If you should do something, there should be a reason. So you shall, you should. If someone ought to do something, you need to have something to back that up. That something has to be more than just, well, we need 3 materials on this building. Why? There are really great buildings that just have one material. So we need to have a why behind these so we don't just have arbitrary principles. And some of those principles are these basics. There's vertical, you have massing, you have bays, right? We're organizing things in bays because people are up and down, so are bays, up and down. How are we regulating things into vertical? Be careful with arbitrary numbers. It's one of the biggest banes of Euclidean zoning, and it's infected form-based zoning too, where you take that zoning code and you have, well, this municipality used 180 feet for building length, so we're going to use it for our code too. And then all of a sudden you wonder why it doesn't work, you wonder why your developers are mad. These things aren't arbitrary, they have to work with existing patterns that can be studied. So you can point to something and say, it's not just 180 feet because it's 180 feet, it's 180 feet because 75% of the downtown buildings that you labeled as your most favorite street have a building length of 180 feet. You gotta back it up, there has to be a should. And there's horizontal, base, middle, top. Base, pedestrian, how is a person experiencing a place? Middle, most of your facade, so probably do pretty good here, try to get it right. The top is delight, right? That's the cornice. You talk about having that strength, having that utility, having that delight, having that connection to how the building meets the sky is why you want to look up. I live in downtown Pittsburgh, I look up, I see the Union Trust building, and you're in Milan, you look up, you see the Duomo, you look at these roof lines, and they're exciting and they're beautiful, and that's why you like it. So put a little delight in the top of your building. And you're in 3 dimensions. Do you know where the front door is? Can you get to it? Do you have to look around and figure out that your building facades don't meet the ground and you're like, I don't really know how to get into this building? Do you know what's public and what's private? Can you get into that courtyard or is it the pool area? So you have to know all these things and understand how is that building responding in 3 dimensions to things happening around it? How is it responding to what's around you? And then you have materials. This is not paint bucket. You can't just say, I want a panel of brick here and I want a panel of stucco there. Why is the material location in the place where it is? Is heavy on the bottom and light on the top? And that's in color too. Is dark on the bottom and lighter on the top? These are perceptions that we have for how things stack on top of each other. This is how we understand buildings. And so if those are the type of things that you start to do as you should, and that you have the way to articulate why, so you can say to someone, this is because this feels this way, then you can have a meaningful conversation instead of just an arbitrary thing where it's like, well, it needs to have 3 materials, it needs to have 3 colors. And you have context. You want to be a good neighbor. You want to get things built. Character is not a dirty word, but it's been a word that's been weaponized. right? So people say, I don't want to change the character of my neighborhood. They're weaponizing that against new construction. You can talk about character and still talk about change and development and the new buildings that are being built. So for example, if you drop a building that lands like a UFO on a 5-foot sidewalk, and you wonder why people are walking by and they're like, well, it's right up against this sidewalk, I have no buffer here. And yes, urbanists, we love lowering the setbacks and getting things closer. If you're talking about a 5-story building, maybe push it back a little bit. Maybe widen the sidewalk a little bit. Maybe emphasize how that building meets the ground and how it meets the pedestrian experience. And that's an interesting conversation, but it's one that we have to talk about when we're like, how do people experience this building beyond what just codes and legislation can we put into place for that? And so guidelines that don't work, I'm going to scare some planners in the room because some of these might be in your codes. I'm sorry. But we have guidelines that don't work. We have elevated ground floors without caveats for significant elevation. I'm not going to call any cities. That's a really bad idea. I have talking about four-sided architecture, arbitrary material percentages, commercial uses only on the ground floor. Like, get some residential down there too. It's okay. Don't be shy. Breaking up the massing, using that in language can be really problematic. So we have some words that we think are going to do the things we think they're going to do, and they don't do those things. Some of those things. Again, if these are your codes, I'm sorry. There are just some problems, and there are some arbitrary things in here that we need to be aware of. And then we have guidelines that can work. This is a framework for good guidelines. I promise we are almost to tables. We want to get specific. We want to focus on the way that the frontages, the public realm works, because you can't always change the right-of-way. Like a lot of the architects in the room, planners room, you know that. You can't always touch that curb line. What you can touch is where the building goes. And so that might be a conversation about what is happening between where that right-of-way ends and where that building begins, because that's where you can play in a way that you can't always in the right-of-way. And you want to focus on what the pedestrian feels, how buildings relate to other buildings, and you want to focus on guidelines for components and how those work to get your results, right? So you're looking at that framework, and it always comes back to people. How do you feel in a space? Do you like how you feel in the space? Because it turns out we tend to like the same things, and we tend to know what we like. So it's usually not as complicated as we like to make it, but it is always coming back to how are people feeling in a space. More of some guidelines that can't work.
No, really great. So the last point that we need to make is it's just not a set of rules, it's a process. And so you have to work through the process and come up with a process that's effective. The processes can be weaponized, and all over the United States, they are being weaponized. This is a project we're working on in Texas. This project, over its 20-year lifespan, had 4 separate processes that some were successful, some weren't. We're just going to quickly show you that so you can understand it. The first process was a developer that had a trusted architect. I don't know if Michael Schwartz is in the room here, but David Schwartz did a bunch of great buildings, all the architects did a bunch of great buildings. They were the architect all the way through to the end, made sure the details were carried through, came up with great buildings. Then there was a second process that came up where they had a trusted architect, and then they gave designs up to design development or schematic design, and then they left. And when they left, some things didn't quite get carried through. So this is a Robert Stern building here. Robert Stern would never have allowed that sign not to be returned with return, right? So that's a process that's happened. A couple other great architects that did, that whose projects got simplified. Then the 2007 recession happened, and the developer went away, and a form-based code was put in place to try to carry forward the project. And so a bunch of market architects tried to do their best under the form-based code, and these were the results. And you can see there's a very different level of finish and attention here than here. After that, there was another developer that was going to take over a big section of the site. They said, whoa, we got to come up with something different. So they created a process with a town architect to manage the design using a style-based system. And style-based systems can be effective. This is part of the system. What you do with the style-based system is some of those the simplistic developers demands that you get have to go away because they got to fit style. And you can show a developer with a style-based system, and this we learned from UGA, you show them that they can get their done box, and then you show the process along how they get there. And if you have someone who's good helping you figure out how to manage that, and you give them images for the market architect, you can guide a market architect to get there. And if they don't get there, you can push them back to a certain step in the process. And so that's a process that then gets some results, not always great results. You really have to, work with them to get it, make sure there's not being upright. And that's a Toll Brothers building. in Texas. So with that, we're at a workshop.